Welcome to the FinCrime Friday Drop, the quarterly live webinar series brought to you by the Network for Financial Crime Prevention and FinCrime Agent. I'm your host and founder of NFCP, Louie Vargas, and today's session and every session is built around you, the AML and financial crime professionals on the front lines of this work every day. This isn't a lecture, this is a conversation. That's super important. So I want to emphasize that this is a conversation. So we want everybody to feel empowered to bring their questions and have a conversation with us. Joining us is Marco Beranzoni, a leading voice in the financial crime space and the mind behind FinCrime Agent, here to answer your real-world questions on career development, AML skills, compliance challenges, and everything in between. So basically an AMA, Ask Me Anything. And whether you're navigating a career crossroads, sharpening your technical expertise, or looking for practical insights, you can apply right away. You're in the right place. So welcome, Marco.
Thank you, Louis. Fantastic introduction. Thanks for anyone who's going to be joining today's session. I look forward to exchange ideas. And as Louis was saying, it's going to be a conversation today. So hopefully we can get some questions answered and help you with the shared knowledge from our end.
Exactly. This is a new format, so we know people might feel a little worried, but we're recording this, so it could also be watched back if people want to hear back some of the things we've shared and use it for inspiration for the future sessions we're going to have in the quarters to come. So as this is our first session, Marco and I thought it would be a good idea to kind of kick things off with kind of going through our journeys and how we, got here in our careers. Because we feel that's pertinent to really share with the community because everybody had their different ways of making it to where they are now, or maybe they're looking forward to making their way into a career like this. So we thought it would be good to kind of kick off with this and, share some of the things we've done. And so Marco, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been myself in the industry for about 20 years now. Originally, I started in payments and fraud prevention in the gaming industry, and I did some experience there talking about 20 years ago, after which I moved into economic sanctions for leading US financial institutions, where I was operating in a very tough job, actually, as a transaction screening. And some of you out there that may currently or have been working in this type of position understand how difficult it is, to be in such a role because of different factors. So there is the repetitive element of reviewing, unfortunately, large volumes of alerts, out of which the majority is not carrying any actual risk, which makes it the fatigue going quite high on a daily basis, big volumes, and great responsibilities at the same time. So even considering that the percentage of those alerts that you're going to catch is super small, you need to always get 100% accuracy on the true positive one. So that was the first impact within the banking sector, working for one of the major really tier one banks in the US, based in London. After that experience for about 4 years, I worked in the group sanctions role for another British large financial institution. Again, moving from a regional, more first line of defense into a second line of defense role, and looking broadly at the sanctions exposure of these financial institutions. And then my career moved from there into a more AML space, where I was transitioned into the intelligence and investigation unit. It's part of the same bank, where we look at escalations, cases that are more complex, coming from maybe second level or even higher type of escalations, to look at the broader client risk exposure from different angles. So the intelligence and investigation unit can operate across sanctions, bribery and corruptions, AML, and all in between, of those potential customer-driven risks, to run investigations and see if there is potentially a case to do a client exit or further investigation needed for escalation into the national or jurisdictional intelligence investigation unit. So that is a very interesting role as well. And if people ask me, I would strongly support moving into that type of career. But after that, I also worked for another role, which I find sometimes people don't talk about as much, but is extremely important on the exposure you get across financial crime domains, and this is in management information and reporting. So essentially is the role where you collaborate extremely closely with senior management, often the MLROs, where they report on a monthly basis all the data related to systems and controls that are currently active within the financial institutions, to see what is going outside certain borders, to see if there are any threshold that has been exceeded, and so on. So because of the type of reporting that you're doing to senior management, this type of role, I think, is very interesting because it gives you a very broad exposure to many financial crime domains and also risks connected to them, because beside the preparation of this paper, it depends what role you do. You might be involved in reviewing commentaries that will actually need to go to the risk committee, making sure these papers are going through a timeline that often is very tight, because every month they are going to actually do these meetings and there is a certain volume of reviews and so on. So it is another job which I think people don't talk enough about it, but it does give you great amount of exposure to senior management and to the broader financial crime understanding and domains. So I've been in that role still with another large financial institution, so the largest UK group really, and then worked after that in a risk assessment, which is kind of a department, is risk assurance, to be clear, that is reviewing significant issues that have been closed by the bank. So this is a team that is operating between the second and third line of defense. So essentially, there is a significant issue that has been identified. The bank operated a program or significant projects to mitigate this issue. When the issue is closed, and keep in mind this could take 1-2 years, depending from the size of the issue, there is this department which is assuring that the way that this issue has been closed is closed according to what is expected, but also to prevent this to be repeated in the future. So there is a lot of reviewing and analyzing how all this mitigation took place, and there is a deep analysis that is being done in order to then get the risk owner to fully sign off the risk and consider the issue closed for good. So this was more broadly experience in financial crime, starting from the gaming industry within the financial services sector. And in the last 7 years, I've been operating for a major vendor provider of technology. So what I'm doing today is visiting mostly clients and speaking at conferences about financial crime. With my clients, I suggest which could be the solution stack that is supporting the mitigation of risks across the key domains. So I mainly operate within AML, sanctions, and the CDD space. So I think this is a high level of my experience, but feel free to ask about my career and different type of angles, because all these jobs, they all carry some knowledge. There are some positive aspects, some negative aspects, and I've always been a great advocate of sharing the knowledge from the practical perspective. We often see our job is described in a job description, hear it from someone, but until you actually get the experience from the people that have been working in the job, you rarely get the nitty-gritty of what the job is about. So always open to support anyone who wants to find out more about the practical experience in operating in this industry. So that was very fast and try to remain to the point about my experience. Back to you, Louis, for sharing your experience now.
Forgot one thing. FinCrime Agent.
Okay, of course, yes, my FinCrime Agent. Yes, 100%. So in the last 5 years, I essentially been collaborating with many people across the industry, but mainly supporting people with the knowledge with this educational channel that is FinCrime Agent, the YouTube that started and then progressed into a full course now, which in the last year has supported more than 100 students. So this is the way for me to pass on the knowledge and then give you a structured course where in 10 modules you can learn more about the industry, those type of jobs we talked about before, and how you can get into it with a number of tools as well. So I don't want to talk too much about the course, but keep in mind that it is there for you if you want to either transition into financial crime prevention, or even if you are in the industry and you want to do a movement from one domain to another. This is extremely helpful. But back to you, Louis, and thank you for reminding me about that, actually.
Yeah, no problem. And I know there's a fine line between sales and the education part, but FinCrime Agent is a big part of who you are. So I feel like we'd be remiss without mentioning that and how you kind of created that and your passion behind it. So that's why I called it out. But yeah, for me, I guess it was a little bit a different course, but I guess just fell into it. I started 12 years ago in the compliance space in a newly created sanctions nameless screening team. I mean, we did other stuff like PEP and negative media and other internal watch list, but as I learned those, I was the first one to actually really focus on sanctions. So that was interesting for a large, it's a global institution, but a US, I guess, headquartered bank. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, before falling into that role, I've had many different roles in different industries, from retail to call centers to medical exams industry, but I just fell in love with it because I just love the kind of research behind it and the greater cause behind it. So yeah, so I did nameless screening and I quickly kind of understood what needed to be done, and I liked the structure around it. It kept me grounded, and I quickly started helping with training and helping my team lead kind of manage the team, help set up the QA program that never existed in the past. So thinking of questions we should ask to kind of find the right way to see if somebody needs help or not, the right weighting between questions. So very manual process. And I did that for a few years. And then I just noticed that nameless screening or client screening was such a small part of, the whole scheme of it. And I wanted to be more well-rounded because I felt like just knowing that one part, I wasn't seeing the full picture. And I just was hungry to be a part of the bigger picture. So in this institution, I tried to transfer internally, being such a large institution as it was, but that proved to be difficult. You get pigeonholed into just saying you do that and that's it. So then I left and I joined a Chinese bank. It's one of the top 3 in assets in the world, potentially still now. It's usually top 5. It fluctuates, but they only have one office in New York, in the United States. So I was hired as an OFAC analyst, but we wore many hats because it's such a small team. So I did, I guess you would say, a mix of both first and second line. The lines were a bit blurry because, again, it's a small shop. But I also did a bit of transaction monitoring, SAR writing, trade finance, and other stuff like that. It was a real trial by fire experience. Nobody was holding our hands trying to help us figure things out. It was just like here, figure it out, figure out how to, clear this, or, why this is an issue, or, we have this deal, we need to know in 5 minutes if we could go through it or not. So it was very tense, I would say, but it wasn't my cup of tea to be in such an environment. I didn't really agree with the compliance culture, but I was able to, get a flavor of different parts of the compliance world. So I would think that was kind of maybe my main purpose of being there, was to have those different flavors. Then I moved on to another bank, which is a German bank, but global presence, again in New York City. I had 3 roles there in the 4 years I was there. So first year, I was doing sanctions QA. So anything sanctions related, we had to review it and provide feedback in a quarterly basis. And then the first line teams had to create a training, or even second line teams had to create a training around the findings we had. So we had a part in that. The other job I had after that was focusing on transactions review, but from a third level perspective. So sitting within compliance, but doing sanctions transaction review. And we received all the difficult cases, all the ones that were potential matches or true matches. We received, the most difficult ones. So did a lot of more research, sent out more requests for information, and we had to make a determination. There was nowhere else to send it. So it was very interesting there. Yeah, we work very closely with the sanctions advisory team. So we got really close to the regulations and the nuances behind it. So it was very interesting. And then the last role I had there, as COVID was changing the world, was in the risk management and reporting team. So they're not as extensive experience as you, Marco, in the space, but we were focused on gathering the data around what we're doing in the sanction space, and also what had to be blocked and rejected and reported to OFAC. We were kind of receiving the information, doing last minute triage on it, and then packaging up and sending it to OFAC. Yeah, so like as I mentioned, that's when COVID started kind of taking over the world. So that was 2020. And yeah, I saw an open role for a large Danish bank, and I just said, hey, let me just take a shot at it, not thinking that I would get to relocate to Europe, but maybe they'll let me work from the New York office. Because previous with the German bank, I wanted to transfer internally to Europe, and I was told it would be too expensive. But yeah, one thing led to another after a few interviews, and we were moving to Europe. So we found our way to Copenhagen, working for the largest bank in the country. And there I was focusing on sanctions as well in the second line, but more so on the controls and technology side of things, which I was quite fond of because I always did it as kind of an aside to my normal job description, because I'm just so curious. I want to know how things work and why things happen. So now having that ability to really focus on it was very fun to do that. I focused on the sanctions transaction screening side, but I also help with customer screening based on my experience, also help different areas of our team. But that was my main focus. And one of the things I did there was also list management, kind of get that into better shape and, have better communication with the first line, especially when it comes to lists that should be in scope and out of scope, and also how we should manage our internal watch lists. And I was there for a couple of years. And then I did a bit of a career shift, huge, but a tiny shift. I went to PSP, or a payment service provider, doing scheme compliance, which is generally the rules that come from MasterCard and Visa and American Express. So, those type of companies. So no sanctions, no AML, but focused on the card companies' requirements and sharing that with the business and trying to be aligned on, whether they're aligned with those rules are already or not, or what they plan to do to get there. And something that I was really shocked about is that in this world, in the PSP world, they accept fines. So they just say, we're not going to do that. And they just pay the penalty. And coming from the space that we're in now, I was shocked. I was like, we never accept fines. What's going on here? But, you kind of roll with the punches and you learn what's done on that side of the fence. So I did that for a little bit, but really missed sanctions, really missed the FinCrime world. And then I went to the largest bank in the Nordics, where I was, again, with second line sanctions, and I was the functional lead for sanction screening. So a role that never existed before, just handling everything in the screening world. So as you could imagine, that is the technology, the investigations, quality assurance, everything, just to make sure second line had the appropriate overview of what's happening, and what remediations should take place or recommend and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a really great experience doing that. And yeah, right. And then also in the middle of that, well, I guess a little bit before that, but also I guess it took off more in the middle of that. I started NFCP, which is network for financial crime prevention. It's a passion project. I mean, we're a registered nonprofit, but it's basically I want to have a safe place for us to learn and grow together, and that's what the intention is, and that's what it always will be. I previously had set up a chapter for ACFCS, which is a certification out of the US. And I set up a chapter here in the Nordics, and that's where I kind of learned a bit on how to do events and stuff like that. Because again, I had that passion to help others. But yeah, I just decided that we needed to do I needed to do my own thing and be a bit more free and able to work with different people and the companies. So yeah, so that's where we are today. I do have a career change coming up, but we'll share that at a different time. But yeah, so no longer with Nordea, of course, still with NFCP, but I said the name of the large Nordic company, and bank. But anyway, so news to come where I'm going next, but that's for a different time. But yeah, hope people found that interesting, kind of the journey of how Marco and I got to where we are today. Yeah, before we keep moving with the agenda, I just wanted to open it up to the floor. Are there any questions that you have for Marco based on what we discussed, or maybe leading up to this event that you've been saving to ask Marco?
Not at this stage, but yeah, very interesting careers. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev.
So yeah, if no questions or concerns at the moment, we'll keep, I guess, moving on with the agenda. I guess Marco, I wanted to I guess pick your brain a bit, because when we were talking about this session and how we wanted to arrange it, we were hoping to have a lot of questions from the audience, but we know that might take time. I guess a bit of an icebreaker. Could you, based on all the work you're doing in your 9 to 5, your day job, but also all the work you do with FinCrime Agent, could you share with us kind of maybe a topic that you feel has been really top of mind for people, and share it with our audience?
Absolutely. Yeah, there is one element which is been coming up quite a lot to me, because I speak with a lot of people daily, also part of the course, part of what I'm doing on the educational FinCrime Agent side. And more people are getting worried and asking me about job security because of AI. And this is something that comes up quite a lot recently. And I want to just give you my personal input on this. So I can see, that technology is advancing very fast nowadays. We know that technology is not really what is stopping us to move forward for having the technology to do things. In our sector, because we operate in a regulated environment, we have large institutions often moving at a bit of a slower pace than other industries. Being regulated, you always need to get the technology approved and checked by the regulators under the jurisdiction where you operate. And all this slows down the adoption process. So in some industry, you've seen the job market changing very drastically. In some of the industries like ours, is probably more gradual, but it is coming. And I think the way that I want to contribute to this type of topic and discussion is to let people know that if you are interested in joining this industry, in getting into financial crime prevention, I think now is really the time. In the next probably couple of years, the volume of entry-level role is gonna probably go down because of that change that we just mentioned. There will be more mature technology, more readiness from the institutional perspective, regulators will be more open to this and so on. And eventually we will get to a position where the entry-level role that are kind of repetitive, that today still people are doing when they moved into move in the industry the first time around, that will slowly but gradually be reduced significantly. So if you don't have the chance today to actually get into the industry, in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, it's going to be significantly more challenging. In my perspective, what I see happening is like we are still seeing people getting recruited today. And the more this is going down, all the people that are within the industry not necessarily are going to be displaced, but there will be a significant period of time where we have the human in the loop process that is required in order for trained people that are already knowing how to do things in financial crime prevention to supervise what the technology is doing, sometimes to train this kind of machine in the right way, to use these these controls around the technology. And of course, you can't actually do that with someone who is very junior and entry level. You need someone which has some experience in the industry gained through years, either in a specific field or in a specific domain, or more broadly across the financial crime sector. It depends really on what you are supervising. So this is, I think, something I wanted to bring up, that if you are interested to join this industry, even to do a transition, maybe from law enforcement or whichever space you are already operating, you probably want to do that in the short term, because things are going to change quite quick. So that is what I would answer to people that are concerned about what's happening in the industry, on the job market, and again, especially at that initial and entry level.
I love that hot take. You heard it here first. So AI is coming. We all know that. It's not going to be eventual that it'll take jobs away, but it's going to look that way, especially for the entry level positions. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because it's a really good point. Because, I think what AI is really good at is, well, I guess you could say technology in general is good at the yes and no's, where it's really difficult to really train. AI is the gray area, and that's where humans kind of are needed. But technology is only getting better, so I guess eventually it will get to a space where it can find the gray area, but it would, like you said, need a human in the loop. So it'll be less it'll be more likely that we'll lose people in the more kind of first level, very what's in your face, making a determination on kind of roles. So we did get one question from the audience, and she can't take herself off mute, so I'll read it. She said, it would be good to hear some of the challenges you both faced and how you overcame these. So Marco, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Some of the challenges faced.
And how did you overcome them?
Yes. I think it depends on what stage in the career, right? That there are different challenges throughout the career that you would need to face. Sometimes there are maybe the level of management that can be challenging to deal with. So this is something that is a bit difficult to actually predict before going into a position. But another challenge, which I think is more predictable and easier to overcome, is to really understand if something you are going to be doing is going to be good or not for you, by really asking people and getting the inside out about that specific role. So in my career, I was growing in financial crime just by, let's say, trying. This job may be good for me, but then I ended up in some of these roles which I did not particularly enjoy, but not because the role is bad on its own. It's just not too much aligned with my personality, what I like to do, and so on. So the way that you can overcome this type of challenges is to get the knowledge first and build a plan about what you want to do and be structured. So in that way, you are going to really learn, for example, and this is now going back to what we were saying before, is one of the reasons why I actually put together my FinCrime Career Accelerator course, is just to give that level of knowledge to people and align what they like to do with what they can do in the industry that they will enjoy. So to avoid these kind of issues, that you may be trying to apply for a specific role or one area that you're not 100% sure if it's aligned with your personality, with what you want to do, build that knowledge, get that information from people who have been doing this kind of roles, and then objectively try to understand if you have the skills for doing that job, if it's something you want to do. And by doing this process, you will be much closer to the reality of what you will be doing once you get that specific role. So this is my suggestion, really. Try to build a path for you that is aligned with what you want to do. And to do that, make sure that you absorb this knowledge by people that have been in these roles, not just in theory, but actually that they've been working in these sectors, in these jobs, in order to then see if it's the right thing for you or not. And this will save you by applying for the wrong job or being stuck in something you don't want to do for too long, and so on. And yeah, so this is probably a good advice that I could give you, and based on also my personal experience. So there has been some of these situations, and life is quite short. We always try to make the best out of the time we spend at work. So if you get that kind of due diligence in place for your own career path before, is going to help you later on when you actually land the job, or when you are actually in transitioning during your career.
Yeah, great points there. Definitely preparation is key, and networking, as you mentioned, right? Talking to the people who are doing the jobs that you would like to do one day, to have that specific skill set that you're trying to build on. Because, theoretically it only takes you so far. I think we've noticed that in the certification culture we are now in, right? That sometimes jobs just want to see what certification you have, but you have no practical experience. So I'm not saying that certifications are not great, but I think it's a mix of both the certification and the practical experience you have that really makes it real and come to fruition, right? So it's not just a genie lamp where you rub it and now you're all of a sudden an expert. They both go hand in hand. Yeah, and I guess for my side, because it was asked for both of us. So really quickly, I'll just say, it's tough to really stay true to yourself, especially when you're looking for a job, right? I mean, the job could sound great on paper, but when you're going through the interview phase, if there's any red flags that come up, really take them to heart. I would say, don't just excuse it because you need a job, right? Or you're looking to shift to a new job. I think personalities is key also when you're looking for roles, right? Especially for your hiring manager. If there's certain expectations that you have for your hiring manager and you could see already in the interview phase that you're not aligned, it's not going to miraculously change when you start, right? I mean, usually, let's be honest, in the interview period is when everybody's putting their best face on and wearing masks, right? But when you really start in a job is where you really meet the real people for who they really are, and you really see the job that's at hand. So if you already seeing red flags on the outset, I would say there's cause for caution. I wouldn't say that means don't take the job, but just be very mindful of what you want to do going forward. And the last thing I would say is, when you're dealing with stakeholders, that could be challenging. Even though you're doing the right thing, sometimes there has to be some compromises made, or just finding ways to communicate in a different way to get them on your side. So sometimes don't just stick behind, the right and wrong fight. Sometimes you have to be a bit of a politician, even in this line of work. Yeah, there's a bit more I think I could share, but we're running low on time, and I don't want to bore anybody. But thank you for the question. Are there any other questions that the audience has? Feel free to go off mute or put it in the chat. While we're giving them a minute to respond, Marco, is there anything you would like to share or anything you have top of mind as we're running toward the end of the session?
Yeah, no, I hope next time there will be a bit more joiners because this is an exchange that we put there to leave you an opportunity to ask us anything, really. We, between Louie and myself, have been in the industry for several decades, so we can bring you some knowledge, some tips, or whatever you really want to find out about quite a lot of areas in financial crime prevention. I just hope that if people are watching these after the live session, do come on these sessions. Please do remember to join as well. We had a number of registrations then that they couldn't show up today, unfortunately, but is, as you can see, an informal and friendly session for us to communicate with you and support the community as much as possible from both sides. FinCrime Agent community and the NFCP. So with great pleasure, we are spending these 45 minutes with you to support the community. And if you're watching this after it's been recorded, keep an eye on the communications that will come out from either an FCP or FinCrime Agent, and you will find out when the next AMA Ask Me Anything session will take place. Apart from that, I don't have any other major input for this call. I was just waiting for people to request some more information from us, really.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marco. Yeah, but it looks like we're out of questions for today. So I'd like to echo what you said. I mean, we're doing this for the community. We're doing this for you. Not you, Marco, but the community, so that, you could grab insights from both of us, but especially from Marco. So it only works if there's active participation. So hopefully next session will be a bit more livelier, especially now that we've gone through our journeys. But, that's a wrap on today's FinCrime Friday drop. A huge thank you again to Marco for sharing his insights, and to everyone who joined us live and participated. You've made this session very, very nice, and hopefully next session we could be a bit more livelier and chatty, so Marco and I could really absorb it all instead of doing all the talking. But we're ready for it. We're here for you. This is what NFCP and also FinCrime Agent is all about. It's about professionals learning from each other, growing together, and building a strong network across financial crime prevention. And if you found this valuable, share it with a colleague who can benefit. And if you have topics you'd like us to cover in the future, drop them in the comments, reach out to us directly. Save up your questions for Marco for the next session. As he mentioned, we'll share that soon when we'll meet next quarter. And to learn more about NFCP, visit us at nfcp.info. To explore more of Marco's work, head over to fincrimeagent.com. We'll see you next quarter. And until then, stay sharp, stay brave, and stay connected.
Thank you.
Thank you again,
Thanks,
Marco.
Louie. Thanks.
Bye-bye.